Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of GLP's 10 out of 10. It's actually quite tricky to know where to start introducing our 10 out of 10 guests this week. American lighting designer Ken Billington is a Los Angeles Drama Critics Award winner, a Boston Drama Critics Award winner, an Outer Circle Critics Award winner, a Drama Desk Award winner, and a Tony Award winner for his theatrical work. He's won the IES Lumen Award for his architectural work, an ACE Award for his television work, and been named an LDI Lighting Designer of the Year, amongst others. He also has his own Wikipedia page. Ken's successful career has spanned more than 5 decades so far as a lighting designer across multiple disciplines, including theatre, television, architectural, opera, dance, themed entertainment, corporate and industrial shows, again, to name just a few. To try and pick out a few highlights is not an easy thing, but to have a go at that, Ken has had almost 100 Broadway shows, short lighting credits up to his name. For 27 years, Ken was responsible for the lighting of the Easter show and the world-renowned Rockettes Christmas Spectacular at Radio City Music Hall in New York. He's had the opportunity to work with artists such as Patti LuPone, Liberace, Shirley MacLaine, Chita Rivera, Liza Minnelli, and Hugh Jackman. He's lit multiple ice shows, touring arenas across North America, and he's traveled the world professionally, particularly with his design for the hugely successful musical Chicago. Welcome, Ken Billington.
Well, thank you. And I'm tired listening to all that.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. You must be, in awe sometimes when you sit down and like look back.
When I look back at it, I go, wow. But what I'm thrilled that I did is I sort of diversified, because all I ever wanted to do was like be a Broadway lighting designer. Well, I did that. And then somebody asked me to light a restaurant, and I did that and was successful. Then somebody said, would you light a TV show? I'd never done that, so all I can do is fail. So I did that, and then started with concerts. And it was just, at the end of the day, I said, oh, I've done a little of everything, and some of it I do well. I will tell you, I don't do retail well. I'm not good at retail. But other than that, I've architectural retail,
right.
Mess. But anyway, other than that, it's fun, and it was always, let's do it.
Right.
It was, because something I learned a long time ago, what's the worst thing they do to you is they fire you. They don't take you out back and shoot you. So if you might be fired. And if I get into trouble, I call my friends, or if I don't know something, because what I learned a long time ago is no matter how good I am at whatever I do, I can't do it all. I only can do what I can do.
Right.
And so I call up other lighting designers and say, hey, have you, and everyone helps. We all help each other. People call me. So it's just been fun. And at the end of the day, I've done a lot of stuff.
You have. And I just want to mention on that, because this is actually not your first appearance on the 10 out of 10 series. You've actually come up in an earlier episode where you were mentioned as one of the question was asked, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? And the piece of advice came from you. So there we go.
Oh, okay. I'm good at that.
So you're already a star of 10 out of 10, but it's brilliant, obviously, to have you here in person as well.
Oh, it's good to be here.
So let's try and wind back to the beginning. And our first question is, what was your first show as a designer?
Well, my first show, the first thing I ever lit was 10 Little Indians for the Harrison Players. And I think I was in the 8th or 9th grade. So that was like the first. I didn't know anything, but I put a lot of, the community players gave me the equipment. So I had like 35 lights. What did I know? They all aimed probably badly and it looked terrible. Then my first off-Broadway professional show was a play called Fortune in Men's Eyes that Sal Mineo directed. And then my first Broadway show was a musical called Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope.
Okay.
something you've never heard of. It was a black review. And it is like in the top 30 long-running shows in Broadway history. But it was a review of its time in 1970 something. Anyway, so that's the beginning.
There we go. Right. So that foundation was very much from the theatrical element, and that's everything began from that, I guess, as the core.
Totally.
Right.
And yeah.
Wow. Fantastic.
And I didn't go to school. The thing is, I tried to go to university, but nobody would have me. So I took lighting courses on a Saturday morning at the Lester Polakov Studio and Forum Stage Design in New York. And my teachers were Tom Skelton, Peggy Clark, and Chuck Levy. And I was 18.
Right.
And then I just started as an assistant when I was 19.
And then worked it out as you went along.
Yeah, and watched all the spectacular people I worked for. So,
right.
I worked mostly with Theron Musser. So I always say I went to Musser U. It was a way.
You can't really get much better than that.
No, it was good.
Really can't. That's good. The peak. So phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So I'm sure over obviously your extensive career so far, there must have been a couple of times where it maybe just didn't quite go as well as it should have done. Things didn't quite go to plan. So our second question is, do you have a moment that you're able to share where everything looked to be so good and so great, and then it just didn't work out?
Yeah, well, there's a number of them, but the one I think that is most interesting is on the 10th anniversary performance of Chicago at the Ambassador Theater in New York. It was a gala evening. It was every star who had ever been in Chicago did a number or did a crossover or did a scene. We had rehearsed it for 2 days. I'd relit it not really relit it, but it opened with Chita Rivera, and then it went to somebody else. And it was everybody. It was as star-studded an event as you could do. The audience was the A-list of the American theater and stars and video and everybody. It was a big deal for an American musical to hit 10 years.
Right.
And I'm sitting in my tuxedo in the middle of the auditorium, just as Melanie Griffith is about to walk on stage to do the Roxy monologue. And it's color scrollers. Chicago and New York is color scrollers, still is. The tours we have made it to LEDs, but New York is color scrollers. And at that moment, a scroll snapped off the end of its reel, and that motor keeps going. And I don't know, there may be young people here who don't know this. It goes,
yeah, that noise, that'll keep you awake at
night. Just like that. By the way, it could drown out a symphony orchestra. It is so loud. Oh. And I heard it go, and I heard it in the background, and it was applause. And so I knew it had happened. And Melanie Griffith goes on stage, and this thing is going. And I'm sitting smack dab in the middle of the auditorium. I'm going, okay, guys, they know what it is. The crew's been there forever. Turn the power off to the scrollers. Turn the power off to the scrollers. No. And Melanie Griffith is now trying to yell over this noise. So I get up, excuse me. I'm stepping over every celebrity in the world. Excuse me. I hit the aisle, run up the aisle, cross the back of the auditorium, down the side, through the pass door. And it was on the proscenium boom. I knew right where it was because my ears told me that. So I go to the pass door, I said, turn it off. And the crew is like, we don't know where it is. We don't know. What do we do? And I said, oh, well. So I go out, and I knew where the proscenium boom was. There was somebody sitting in a chair, and I said, excuse me? And Melanie Griffith is now stopped, and the director has run down to the front row. And I, in my tuxedo, I climb up on the armrest of the guy's chair and just pull the first DMX plug I could find, and it all stopped. to a round of applause, I must tell you.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
And the show continued. They fixed it at the interval, but at intermission, all the press came up to talk to me, and it was not a negative thing.
Right.
By the way, it wasn't opening night. Probably everybody in that audience had seen the show 3 times. It was all about live theater, and there's nothing like it. It isn't always the same. So it turned out okay, but it was a little frightening at the beginning.
That's a great story, and you became the star of the show for.
I became the star, and everybody knew who I was because there I am standing up trying to reach.
That's phenomenal. Oh, brilliant. That's great. Exactly that noise of a scroller hitting, coming off its roll is, unmistakable. Absolutely unmistakable. Fantastic. What a brilliant story. So moving on from that, what's the best piece of advice that anyone's ever given you, professionally or otherwise?
Right. Well, Theron Musser, we were talking once, and it was about something, and she said, Ken, and it was about a job that I was taking that somebody else was not going to be doing, who thought they were going to be doing the job.
Right.
And it was a very large event. And I called her and I said, I just called for advice. And I said, I felt awkward about it. And she said, Ken, when they don't want you, they don't want you. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And she said, if they don't want you, they will use the janitor before. They're not coming back to you. They're going to go someplace else.
Right.
So just remember, if somebody doesn't want you, they don't want you, and move on from that. And that's what it is. And that's always been a good piece of advice, when I haven't gotten a job or if something's gone, I've never been fired, but it's, but I do know when I had to go talk to producers when they're going on about lighting designer, and there's no way to salvage those things.
Right.
So I sort of remember, when they don't want you, they don't want you. And as harsh as that might be, it's true.
It's the reality of the situation. Yeah, the decision has already been made. The minds are already decided.
Yeah, absolutely. And
firm sage advice.
Sorry.
I say firm sage advice from obviously somebody who had experience as well.
Sure.
Yeah, brilliant. So again, you've had a career that spans into decades, and you've touched so many different genres of lighting. What would you say, if you can pinpoint one, what would you say is your proudest achievement so far?
I will tell you exactly what my proudest achievement is. As a 2019 U.S. Knights of the Illumination Award.
Right.
And I was not nominated, but some of the winners were Brandon Baker, Natasha Katz,
yes,
John Husner, and Ben Piercy, and they all started their careers in my office.
Oh, really? Wow.
And they all won the same season, one for television, one for ballet, one for theater, and one for a video, event.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I have given some of myself to a number of people, but that these 4 people who started their careers, Natasha had worked for somebody actually before she came to me, but the other 3 started their careers in my office.
Wow.
And that was just made me feel like, okay, I've done something good.
passed on the baton and which is absolutely, I mean, so important. I know you do a lot of stuff with the next generation coming through, and like you mentioned before, some portfolio reviews and all kinds of activities like that, which is obviously fantastic.
Yeah, well, people helped me and people gave me stuff. They were always open and generous.
Right.
And I started very young. I started working on Broadway at 19. So I just feel it is up to me to do the exact same thing.
Right.
You know, I need to encourage and I need to help, which is why I always, every year, and they get to work for a year, I hire somebody new that usually is just out of college to work for a year in my office.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Right.
I don't believe in interns. I think you should be paid to do
Right.
what your job is.
Mm-hmm. There we go. Wow, that's phenomenal. So any budding young designers working through their way through college at the moment, they need to, when they're done, they can look you up and shoot you an email.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's how I find them. I mean, you know, lots of people try, and it depends what the week is and what the skill set is, and you know.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that goes with it. But
of course, yes.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as that, but
and I've had a lot of spectacular people work for me.
yeah, I could imagine. Yeah, for such a period of time, it's that's brilliant. And some names there that you mentioned. I mean, just the fact that they were Night of Illumination award winners says enough. But to have a roll call of them is
right. Yeah. No. And somebody has once said we should do a yearbook of all the people who have. And I said, well, we better start trying to figure out who they all are and write it down and come up with the years, because I never thought of it when we started doing it. But it is.
Wow, that would be quite the collection. That would be a great coffee table book. You know, we have obviously our situation with a lot of lockdown and things like that going on at the moment. Work is restricted. What do you normally do in your downtime?
Downtime is rare. I must say, I force myself to take some time. My idea of downtime is doing nothing.
Okay.
And I mean nothing. I mean, I might, you know, paint a bookshelf or something, but I mean, my weekend house is near the beach in East Hampton, New York.
Mm-hmm.
I love the beach. If it isn't beach weather, I just love looking out my window, reading my book. So my downtime it's nothing exotic. It is relaxing, sleeping late, enjoying my life, and doing
Great.
nothing.
Just
truly nothing.
That's great. Switching off completely.
Turning it off.
Right. That's great.
But now that I have done that for a long time, you know, I had never had 4 months or 4.5 months of doing nothing. And I got my house clean and did all those things. But the one thing I did learn is I have now done the dress rehearsal for retirement, and I will not be attending the performance.
That's a great way to put it. There's still plenty of years left in you yet. Plenty of designs yet to be realized.
Carry me out. That's it.
That's the right attitude. There we go.
Right.
That's it. You've worked obviously around the world in so many different places. Do you have a favorite venue at all?
Yes, hands down, in Radio City Music Hall.
Right.
Which I think other people who have been on your program have mentioned. But it's I started there in 1979 with they did a production of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the Disney movie, live on stage.
Okay.
And Radio City had never had an outside lighting designer. It had always been, all the shows there since it had opened in 32 had been lit by the house electrician.
Okay.
Very well, by the way. It was a great setup. But since they were doing a musical, they brought me in to light this musical, and dealing with a very large, iconic theater that was on the first 5-scene preset board ever made with Theratron tubes. I started lighting the shows there and did it for 27 years. I loved the crew. I loved the venue. I loved everything about it. And it was great.
Right.
And it is by far my favorite theater in the world.
Yeah, it is. As you mentioned, a few other people have said, it's an iconic venue. I mean, with a fantastic crew, everybody just loves going in there. It's
Yeah, and when we did when we do spectaculars, I don't do them anymore. You know, I have 10 follow spots in the booth, but each operator runs 2 lights.
Okay.
So they're in, which is left over from when they opened the theater. So each man runs 2 follow spots.
Right.
And they used to be hand-fed arcs. Now they're HMI, but it's they're big old Kliegel 150 amp arc lights with refitted to the first HMI light bulb ever put into a spotlight in 1975. But the guys run too. I just love, and sometimes I would do silly things with the spots, and I'd turn around and watch a lamp do that, and knew it was one man following 2 people going across the stage.
That's incredible. That's got to be a special art to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, it is. The guys are, and also if they ever made a mistake, the elevator out of the booth is into the lobby of.
Right.
Yeah. So they would come out, the crew would come down and go out that way. And if anybody made a mistake and I was still at the table, they go, sorry, KB, we screwed that up. Won't happen again.
Okay.
So
right.
Stop and tell me the mistakes.
They'd acknowledge it. All right.
Yeah. They were very proud of it and still are.
That's fantastic. That's incredible. 2 spots at one time. There we go. That's a talent. We have some of this lockdown going on still. In terms of music, and let's just say you were going to be isolated. Is there one artist or one particular record that you would always want to have with you to help relax? And
now everyone's going to think I'm odd and strange. I like quiet. So no.
Okay.
And this comes about from a car I got in 1976, which I still have, an MGB, which is a sports car. It didn't have a radio.
Okay.
And I drove that for about 10 years. So when I was in the car, there was nothing to listen to. And then my next car was a CJ7 in 1985, which I just got rid of. And that had no radio. So my next car I didn't get till 2000. So I never listened to the radio in the car driving. And then I would get home and I sort of got used to the quiet things. My favorite thing though to do is on a Saturday in New York is to go to my drawing board and design a show on a Saturday. First of all, nobody bothers me. But I put the Metropolitan Opera broadcast on and I listen to that while I'm designing.
Okay, right.
In my office is background music. I have the classical radio station in New York. Yeah. And I know this sounds odd, but I sort of am not a big music guy.
Right. That's, no, that's unusual, but it's certainly not odd. You get enough of it, I guess, during your day job that it's okay.
Oh yeah, no, and I totally get the music, and I know how to cue it, and I do all those things. And by the way, when I have a job coming, I listen to them all. I mean, it's not like I ignore it all, but just in I would never think of turning music on while I'm sitting in my living room.
Right. Okay. Always take a book instead, or like you said, look out the window.
I read the newspaper cover to cover every day, and my book, and email.
Some way to turn that off, right? There we go. Now, if you were able to jump back and go and visit the teenage Ken Billington and offer one piece of advice to him, what would that be?
Well, it's a good piece of advice, and I learned it while I was a teenager, believe it or not. And it's shut up and listen. And how I really came to that, and I taught myself that, and I remember I was doing as an assistant on the Broadway show, The Birthday Party, a Harold Pinter play. Mm-hmm. I was assisting Theron Musser, and we all went to lunch. And at lunch was Theron Musser, Harold Pinter, uh, Alan Schneider, the director, William Rittman, the set designer, the producer, and myself. We all went to one of the theater hangouts for an hour lunch.
Huh.
And I thought I had a lot to add to this conversation. And I remember I'm sitting there with Harold Pinter. Come on, what did a 19-year-old?
Right.
And they were all talking about whatever they were talking about. And then I decided it was time to add something to the conversation. And I said something totally 19 years old. And everybody turned, looked at me. Nobody said anything. And then they immediately went back to their conversation.
Right.
And the lesson was, shut up and listen.
Right.
And I did that, and it was a great lesson. I worked with some of the most famous people in the world, and I just smiled and listened.
Right.
And if I was asked a question, of course, I wasn't shy. If I was asked a question, I would answer it. And, but it was a good lesson.
Right. Listen and learn. There we go.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of wise words out there to be heard.
Mm.
That's great advice. That's great advice. If you were able to sit down for a cup of coffee with anybody at all, somebody living, somebody dead, and just spend a bit of time with them and have a great conversation, who would that be?
Well, I thought about this question, and I thought, gee, do I want to talk to Michelangelo? Who do I want to spend time with? And I really thought Louis Hartman. Now, you have no idea who Louis Hartman was. Louis Hartman invented lighting. He was David Belasco's head electrician and lit all of his shows. He's the one who put a spotlight, he put a lens on a light. I mean, he invented stage lighting.
Okay.
And at the turn of the 20th century. And when I knew I was doing this, I just looked up something, and here's something that he said, and I'm just going to read this because it's interesting. And this is from the turn of the 20th century. So this is, lights are to drama what music is to the lyrics of a song. No other factor that enters into a production of a play is so effective in conveying its moods and feeling. They are as essential to every work of dramatic art as blood is to life.
Wow.
That was for the man who, called GE and said, make me a light bulb to put into this box. And he put a lens on the front of it.
The guy.
And he lit the original Madame Butterfly play. And he talks about dyeing silk so we could have it rolled in front of the Linnebach projector to make the sunrise.
Right.
So it was just dyed, and lighting effects were really impressive. So I would just like to see how brilliant. I mean, he invented lighting.
Right. To tap into his
mindset. And then DeMille, that's when movies were just starting. Got to remember, movies didn't exist yet. And movies came from New York in those days. And Cecil B. DeMille put them on and all that to come up with lights to light movies.
Right. That's true. That was all happening at the same time. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
wow. No, that would be an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what he thought of today's lighting.
Oh yeah, it's a little brighter. They have 250 watt PCs on the first electric. Can you imagine that on now? Everyone going, what? Well, I can't see.
Yeah. So, something quite different. Wow.
That's true.
Brilliant. Okay. And we're up to our 10th question, our last one, which is kind of one of our fun questions. So in a few moments, you're going to get a call from the US Olympic team, and they're going to call you up for it's your time to compete for America in the Olympics. Now, it could be the Summer Games or the Winter Games, but the question is, what's the sport that they're going to call you up for?
Volleyball.
Volleyball, okay.
Yeah, I don't play it anymore because every time I played it recently, I seem to pull a lot of muscles. But that was my sport. I play on the beach all the time. I play in Central Park. I play in Riverside Park in New York pickup games.
Great.
I love, and I'm 6'5", so I was really good at dunking.
Yeah.
And I loved volleyball. I don't think I could do it anymore, but I loved it.
It is a great sport, and it's, I think, I'm not sure how long it's been in the Olympics, but it's been there for a while, both the beach version and the arena version. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. There we go. Volleyball it is. Ken, you've recently returned from London, where you were putting on, designing obviously the lighting for, and putting on a brand new production of Sleepless, a musical romance, which is based on the film Sleepless in Seattle. It's, as far as I know, that's the first West End show to start. Certainly the first West End musical to start up again. So tell us about it. What happened? How did it go?
Well, you know, it was first, and everybody was watching us. But it started we started in March. We loaded in the 1st of March, and it's a new musical based on the screenplay of Sleepless in Seattle,
Right.
with a 15-piece orchestra and a cast of 20, and and 75 moving lights, and all the turntables, and lots of video, and all the things that go with big musical.
Right.
3 follow spots, all of that. And we started tech, and I lit the first scene of the show. We loaded in, focused it, and then I teched the first scene. They did a sitz probe, and then we were sent home. And then we stopped production because that was the 18th of March. The West End had closed, Broadway had closed down earlier than that. The West End, it was bigger in New York than it was, the virus, than it was in the UK, but it was catching up. And so we shut down, and I flew home, and silly us, we thought it would be a month maybe, and then we'd be back doing it. And then the producer called me in July, said, we're doing this show, we're opening September 1st, and I said, how are you gonna do this, Michael Rose, producer? And he said, we're doing this. And he had gone out and found a company, it's a Polish company, that had come up with a COVID test that has results in about 40 minutes. And that was the secret, actually. The theater was available. They had to come up with other protocols, but anyway, so I flew over. I had to quarantine for 2 weeks. I went to Michael Rose's house in Bournemouth, and had a beautiful old barn, and it was exquisite. It was like being at a resort, I must tell you. And anyway, but then we went back, and honestly, I could not necessarily remember what I had done. I sort of had an idea, but we had lit the opening. I had focused it, and we had done the opening of the show, and we had run it, like lit it, ran it twice, and then that was the end of it.
Right.
I had also written about 150 light cues. While they were in the sitz probe, I continued lighting ahead. And then we go to the theater. So they decide to start, and this becomes long-winded. I'm sorry, but the crew was brought in for 2 days before the cast arrived. So, and that was because the rig had been sitting there since the 18th of March till the 10th of August in a room. And the Wembley Park Theater was an old sound stage. So it is a building that lends itself to social distancing as opposed to a 19th century theater building.
Right.
So they came in and they turned so the routine is you come to the theater at the appointed hour, let's say 9 a.m. And they would either swab your nose, like the thing that comes out the back of your head, they shove up your nose, and, or they would swab your throat. With swabbing your throat, you really could have no coffee or juice or anything for about an hour beforehand.
Okay.
They would swab it, then it goes down a little line. There were four people. There was a registered nurse doing the swabbing and sticking it in a thing. We all had an app on our phone that we had to check in with, and then it would go into a machine, and 40 minutes later, we would get the results. Now, this turned out to be about an hour, 10 minutes, because it took a few minutes per person to go down the line. So by the time they loaded the 12 or 24 into the machine, it was just time. But we would get negative results. And everybody who went into the building, everybody was tested, or you did not get into the building. And the BBC sent a photographer. They had to be tested. You know, newspaper reporters were reporting on the event had to be tested. So it was a COVID-free environment. It was probably the safest place in London.
Right.
With all these people.
I was going to say, that was one of my questions. Did you feel safe once you were?
Totally, because all our colleagues were negative.
Right.
And negative day after day after day after day.
Yeah.
It wasn't, oh, Monday we're negative and next Monday we're negative. It was Monday you're negative, Tuesday you're negative, Wednesday. Went through it that way. On the first day, 2 shop techs tested positive, so they reran their tests to make sure it wasn't an error, and they tested positive the second time, and they were sent to the hospital.
Okay.
So it worked.
Yeah.
And then the cast arrived, and it all got faster and smoother. It was because the testing people were learning. We were learning how fast you can get up there and online. And, you know, have your mask down, have your phone out, have them scan your code. Anyway, we would get a negative on our phone, and then we would get a colored wristband.
Okay.
You know, we're going to a theme park, and we would go into the theater. And then when you were in the theater, the Wembley Park Theater, said people had to wear masks in the auditorium. That was a theater rule, even though we were all negative.
Okay.
So there was a cross aisle that was lighting. My associate to my left, me, Vic Brennan, my programmer, and electricians. And that was our area. There was a velvet rope at the end of the aisle. And we were the only ones in there.
Okay.
No, and people did not intrude on our space. Video was in front to the left. Same thing. The director was in front of me. Automation was there. Sound was behind me. And it was a little awkward because you couldn't walk and talk to people. So when I was, sometimes you walk, I go down and sit with the director and say, hey, what if we did, and not necessarily about lighting, sometimes say, can you bring them on stage 3 feet, or shouldn't they make their entrance upstage? You know, whatever those things are, we do as creative participants on the show. So I couldn't do that, and vice versa. The director could not come up and join me. Many times on the buckboard, the director plops themselves down. Some directors don't ever leave there. They direct the show from sitting 6 inches away from me. So we had to figure out that communication. I couldn't run over to video and say, what if we had to do it on headset? We had dedicated headsets. My headset had my name on it. Nobody else used it. Everything, and we had wipes, and I think you have a picture of the new production table stuff we could show. But we would wipe everything down every day. And the director finally wore a headset.
Okay.
Because it was the only time he could, that's how we could talk to the stage manager, to the video, the sound, the lighting. That's how we had to communicate. Not ideal. I mean, sometimes if he wasn't on his headset, I would stand up at the table and yell, David, pick up your headset. And he would have his headset. So that was the routine. The other thing we could not do, when the cast did not need to wear masks on stage. So they were unmasked to perform.
They get an exemption.
The show itself is social distance itself. It's about people not meeting. It's about the two people never meeting until the last minute. There's no dance numbers, so until the finale. So, but I could not walk on stage. We were not permitted on stage when the cast was there.
Really?
Go on before the cast, but I could not, and we had to change our shoes to go with, because we weren't bringing the germs from the street onto the stage.
Right.
Which made it a little awkward. There's a turntable in the show, and if you can't figure out how to light somebody in a thing this big on a turntable that's turned wherever, you need to walk up and you go, the third light on the first electric and what it is, and you turn that on, and then you sometimes have to say, okay, can we take the turntable 6 inches?
Right.
I could not do that. It was all hunt and peck. So
right.
Turn that on. No, that doesn't work. Turn that on. No, try that one. That doesn't work. Until you could find the right light that would fit between all the bits and pieces.
Right.
So that was a little awkward. And also many times I talk to the actors. I will go up and say, hey, you need to stand here because I'm doing, and I explain the moment I'm creating. I'm going to hit you with a backlight from here, and on the last note, it's going to go out in another one. So if you hit here, I can do a great event. If you're not there, none of that could happen.
Right.
So that made it a little awkward. Other than that, when wearing a mask, it was lighting as usual.
Lighting as usual. But that's interesting that within your bubble, you still had separate bubbles with the creative and the cast. All yeah, right.
And the one thing we could not do, once we were in the building, we could not leave the building.
Okay.
So we had to bring all our meals with us. So we bring our lunch, our dinner, our snacks, our liquids.
Right.
You could bring you couldn't leave. If you left the building, you broke the sleepless bubble. And the next time you could come back was after you were tested the next morning.
Okay.
So on dinner breaks, there was a courtyard. This theater had a courtyard. So we would all go out and eat in the courtyard. Everybody. We would just go out and eat. Because it was the same crowd who had been inside who had all tested negative.
Yes.
And we had the 1 hour dinner break or lunch break or whatever, the tea breaks, whatever the breaks were normal.
Yeah.
And then we would go back and we would continue on.
Right.
And it turned out, I'll tell you, with a mask, I one day tried a visor, those big visors. It was like looking at the stage through a piece of frost.
Right.
That lasted 20 minutes. Well, the mask came back.
Right. That was
but the interesting thing was everybody respected it.
Right.
Nobody breaking the rules. This was the rule. Nobody was moaning and groaning. Nobody was, I ate Sainsbury's sandwiches for 3 weeks. That was my lunch and dinner. Because that's what you could bring. There was only one microwave in the oven, so you couldn't sort of grab that with 60 people trying to do it. PRG sent over a refrigerator, so we had a little refrigerator by the production table. So we could have salads and, and we tried Deliveroo, which is a delivery service, but, it would say 15 to 20 minutes, and that would mean 15 to 90 minutes, so you'd be back and dinner would come. So we tried that a few times. It was unreliable.
Unreliable for the schedule.
And not the delivery guy. The delivery guy was great. He was waiting at the restaurant.
Yeah.
Then when we added the audience, they had, again, you have a picture there showing the auditorium, and you see all the seats that have X's on them. And they added more aisles. It's a 1,200 seat theater. We could have 401 people.
Okay.
So we added extra aisles, so you never had to cross anybody to get to your seat. If you were a party of 4, you sat down. Nobody had to cross over you to get to the other end of the aisle. There was always an entrance.
Direct access.
That was great. When you came in, you had to check You scanned the code, filled in all your tracing information, temperature taken, hand sanitizer. They looked in your bag. Nobody poked into it, but the security check. Everyone spaced. You had to buy your drinks via an app on your phone. And then you went into the theater, and everybody wore a mask, had to wear a mask. And they were spread out, 400 people over 1,200 seats. It was just a little strange in the reactions because the laughter was muffled. The applause, though it was hearty and it was good, it was spread out.
Yes.
And the audience had a great time. And it just took some getting used to, which meant I could not go sit in the seats and watch the show from the fifth row. If I wanted to watch the show from the fifth row, I had to gather my belongings and get them out of our COVID-free zone. And I could watch, but that meant I could not go back to the console and give notes. I could not. I had to stay away from, I could not go backstage to exit. I had to leave with the audience.
Right.
And we had a separate entrance up to the lighting console and sound mix position and the production row. And there was no audience near us. We were away from the audience. Nobody was allowed backstage. Nobody, if you wanted to meet somebody after the show, you have to go out. Actors had to go meet them on the street.
Right. There was no guests or family.
No guests at all, and no guests coming to visit. You know, we're all very sort of social when we do what we do.
Yeah.
And I look forward to you're in town and you call me up and you say, and I'll say, oh, come by and we'll have dinner. And you show up at 6 o'clock, we have dinner, and maybe you come over and watch 20 minutes rehearsal or something, and you go on your way. None of that. There's no socializing because we couldn't. We socialized with each other. And it worked. We opened a show. It was successful. They are selling out their 401 seats.
That's fantastic.
And Michael Rose is probably going to make no money on this, but he's trying hard. And I owe it to him. And now everyone has noticed how we've done it.
Right.
And, you know, and I wonder why our governments couldn't figure out how to get a 40-minute test, you know, that's out there. I mean, a theater producer found it.
Right.
I mean, in the theater, we find all sorts of things. You think a major government could go find something, but anyway, who knows?
Yeah, you'd think so. Absolutely. So when you normally left the theater in the evenings and went back to your accommodation, I guess there everybody was just careful. You didn't, you know.
Yeah, I was staying at a Hilton hotel not far from the theater, which had one floor open. You know, they had been closed for 3 months. My room was sanitized, had a sticker on it. And there's nothing in the room, like there's no glasses, you know.
Right. All the disposable things have been removed.
Yeah. And they did not make your room up. If you wanted your room housekeeping, you had to tell them at the desk or call down. And I would have it done about every 3 days, and they would put the sticker on the door and do it. I had a refrigerator in my room so I could have snacks or something, but there was nobody being in the hotel. There was nobody on the elevator.
Right, of course. So that was
one person at the front desk. At night, the roof terrace was open with one bartender.
Okay.
The kitchen was closed, so we would stop yet again at Sainsbury's and bring more sandwiches to the bar after the show, and the bar closed at 11:30. And on the days off, I would mask and glove up, and I would go into meet some friends at a private club for dinner or something.
Right. Yeah, and then obviously when you're back, then the entrance to the bubble required a new test.
Yeah, and every day a test. Yeah. Every day.
Did you get many like inspectors or other sort of like government authorities or people either coming along just to make sure you were doing what you said you were going to be doing, or just to watch and observe and go, how are they doing this? Was there?
Well, towards the end, because we were doing it, the all the news, the BBC did. I think we had 4 people. We had a producer, sound person, videographer, and a host from the BBC. So, and that was on all the news. That was like major news in the country. All the newspapers were there. And after we opened, then the government types came on opening night. And Andrew Lloyd Webber has been there. All the theater owners were there. You know, everyone came to see how we did it. But we were in a building that was an old sound stage, so it lent itself to doing this. You know, there were more than 2 people in a dressing room. The auditorium was big. It had outdoor space, very big lobbies, massive toilets for a theater. You know, no waiting, and the building lent itself to it. But we did it, and now they're going to start doing it in the West End. I read that, you know, 6 is coming back in November or December or something. So
things are going to start happening.
So things will start happening.
Wow.
We could do it, and we did it safely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Congratulations. I mean, that
and by the way, going back and doing what I do, sitting there with a headset over my uncomfortable face mask, creating a piece of theater with all the other collaborators was thrilling. It was enlightening. I couldn't think of anything better. And I would wake up in the middle of the night singing the songs if I woke up in the middle of the night, you know, and I was sleeping well. And everybody was just excited to be there. And yes, being paid is good, but it was, people wanted to be there and so that it could happen, you know.
Just to be back there creating.
Yeah, as creative artists, we don't like sitting around.
Right.
We really don't.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely phenomenal. And then when it came to, you know, the normal process of opening a show with the press coming and the theater critics and writing reviews, did that part of the process happen as well?
Yes, absolutely. Opening night, they had 60 critics there, which was 120 tickets for the 400 seats. Because we got to remember, the critics have been out of work also.
Of course, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
They write about theater and go to theater. So all the critics were there. And we had an opening night. The party was, you had to wear a mask, and it was outside in the courtyard, and it was basically drinks, you know, there was no food. It was just, and it went on for about 45 minutes or an hour. And, you know, I thanked all the people, and I got on a plane and came home.
Great. Back into quarantine again, right?
Right. And the reviews came out the next day, and they were good, and the show was doing well, and they hope to transfer it, and, you know, but we've done step 1.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I mean, again, congratulations on being part of the team that was able to pull it off.
Thank you.
And lead the way.
Lead the way. And, you know, and I was thrilled and happy I was there. And then, of course, I would get sad thinking of all the people who are not working, you know, of all the designers and the technicians and, well, the theater makers of the world. I was making theater, and I was happy, and we were all doing what we'd done. And it was the exact same team that had been there before. But I then said, oh, I'm getting to do this and nobody else is,
right?
You know. But then I thought, this is going to show people how to do it and how it happens.
Yes.
And it's it's good.
That's great. And and how to show. You mentioned before, you know, the politicians, the health officers, the local authorities, that it can be done. Absolutely.
Right. And we did have a COVID officer at the theater who talked to everyone, and everyone knew the rules. And we all obeyed the rules because there's too much at stake not to.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's great. That's absolutely great. Let's hope it goes on to bigger and better things and leads us.
Let's hope, and let's get the theater back, and then get working, and get, get the shops back, get the manufacturers back, get the creators back, get this route that it takes to make an entertainment every night.
Indeed, the whole chain, the whole supply chain running through.
Oh, please, we have
to get it moving again. No, I completely agree. Ken, it's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you so much for finding the time to join us.
Well, this has been fun.
Absolutely brilliant to hear you and to have you on in real person, as I say. So, thank you very much. Obviously, we look forward to catching up in person as and when that opportunity comes around.
Well, we will do it sooner than later. Let's hope.
Let's hope so. Fingers crossed for that.
Okay.
Ken, thank you very much, and see you soon.
Okay. Bye.